Local 4 News starts now with a breaking news alert.
First at 4, the mass shooting at Michigan State University hits even closer home as we learn 3 victims grew up in Metro Detroit.
It's never been tougher to lead and to be an educator and be a student, than now. Excuse me.
So much grief, so much confusion.
As parents, we tell our kids, it's going to be okay. We say that all the time. But the truth is, words are not good enough.
And the growing sense of frustration that shootings like this keep happening.
I am filled with rage that we have to have another press conference to talk about our children being killed in their schools.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Karen Drew, along with Kimberly Gill this afternoon for an extended edition of First at 4 with in-depth coverage of the shooting tragedy at Michigan State University.
We've been covering this investigation every step of the way for the past 20 hours. We'll be hearing from Devin Scillian, reporting from the MSU campus, while Hank Winchester and Priya Mann are learning more about the lives of the 3 young victims. And that's one of the saddest updates. 2 of the students who died are from Grosse Pointe, and the third is from Clawson. 5 other MSU students remain hospitalized in critical condition. The campus remains on modified operations today and tomorrow. Classes and school activities are canceled. But as you've probably heard, the 43-year-old gunman died after shooting himself. Police say it was a tip from the public that helped them track him down. And right now, one of the big questions is haunting students, police, and the entire Spartan community. And that question is, why?
We have absolutely no idea what the motive was at this point. We can confirm that the 43-year-old suspect had no affiliation to the university. He was not a student, faculty, staff, current or previous.
Our crews are on the MSU campus talking to students, and we're at Sparrow Hospital checking on those who were injured.
We will have updates throughout the next 2.5 hours. We'll bring you the very latest information on the investigation and how the campus is coping this afternoon. Devin Scillian on the campus right now with the very latest. Devin, it started out this morning a very eerily quiet, and now more students are walking the campus. Tell us the feel there this afternoon.
Just a few, Karen. It really still feels like you're walking around campus during a holiday break. It's eerily quiet. It's not anything like what we expect to see on a thriving American campus in the middle of the school week. Just very little going on here around the Union. This massive long stretch of crime tape behind me that basically goes almost around an entire block. But this is a huge crime scene behind me at the Union building. There have been students being escorted in and out one at a time because a lot of them had to leave their belongings in there as they when they finally were able to get out. But I've been watching some of the, in fact, when I first got here, there was an FBI agent escorting one student out back to his dorm with the goods and the belongings that he had gotten for himself. And he looked stunned, and it dawned on me right at that moment, the people who were coming here today to retrieve their things were the ones who saw, of course, the worst of all of this. Over these next 2 hours or so, 2.5 hours or so of news, we really want to keep our focus on Brian Frazier, Ariel Anderson, and Alex Werner, on the victims rather than on the assailant. We, of course, know that that's an important part of the story, and we're piecing that together as well. But let's talk more and look more into the lives that were lost. Hank Winchester is in Grosse Pointe with more on that. Hank?
And Devin, tonight there's a vigil planned here at the church behind me. We're at St. Paul here on Lakeshore Drive and Grosse Pointe Farms. That vigil tonight is for Brian Frazier, as you mentioned, one of the victims. Take a look at some photos of Brian, who is a graduate of Grosse Pointe South from 2021. He was working last night in the student union on campus when this shooting played out. The other victim here from Grosse Pointe, Ariel Anderson, she went to Grosse Pointe North, which she was graduate of the class of 2021. She is a native of Harper Woods. Her family members posting messages last night on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, desperate to locate her. As all of this was unfolding, they were unable to reach her, and sadly later in the evening found out that she was one of the 3 students who was killed. The superintendent here in Grosse Pointe was just stunned to learn that this has come so close to home. Grosse Pointe, as most of you know, very tight-knit community. He sent a note out to all parents and students informing them that 2 of their own were among those who were killed on campus last night in East Lansing. The superintendent talking with the media a short time ago, and here's what he had to say.
I took this pause and thought to myself, how is it possible? How is it possible that this happened in the first place? An act of senseless violence that has no place in our society, and in particular, no place at school. But then it touched our community not once, but not twice. And now this event that has touched our nation, in fact, is now touching directly our community.
There are grief counselors on hand at all the Grosse Pointe schools today, not only to talk with students, but staff, anybody that needs help during this very difficult time. We want to turn our attention now to Clawson. Clawson being the home of the 3rd student who was killed in this horrible tragedy. My colleague, Priya Mann, is working to learn more information about that part of the story. Priya, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Hank. And just like in Grosse Pointe, the community here in Clawson is grieving. Alexandria Werner graduated from Clawson High School in 2020. She was at MSU Monday night. The 20-year-old was shot and killed. Educators were glued to the television screen as information was slowly starting to trickle in. They found out at around 3 this morning that Al, as she went by, was one of the students who was shot and killed. She had such a bright future ahead of her. This was a star basketball player, volleyball player, softball player. She was a role model here in Clawson at just 20 years old. She had dreams of having a career in forensics. All of that was cut short. The community here just grieving right now. Many educators knew her since she was just in kindergarten. Take a listen to what the superintendent and assistant principal and varsity basketball coach had to say.
How will Al Werner be remembered? Wow. You know, for me, massive smile, intense smile, infectious, where when you're around her, you feel better about you. Every single time. The kindness and the giving mentality just poured out of her.
We're all struggling big time. We were supposed to play a basketball game tonight, but my basketball team is in no way, shape, or form ready to play. So we did cancel that game, and we're going to spend the day together. We're going to spend the night together. So it's just in honor of Al.
Yeah, that basketball court that Al loved so much will be quiet tonight as players, students, staff come together, grieve tonight. There are plans for a memorial and a vigil in the coming days, as well as a tribute to future athletes in Al's memory. School officials here just saying they want to wrap their arms around every student here and come through this together. Of course, we'll have much more coming up tonight at 5 and 6 o'clock. For now, I'm Priya Mann, live in Clawson. Karen, I'll send it back to you.
And Priya, I know that we do this and it's a horrible, we talk about these students and they're gone, but the lives that they have touched, she obviously seemed very remarkable, a shining light for her friends, her family, and her community, right?
Absolutely. I mean, this was somebody who was a role model. She was a leader, educators tell me, in the classrooms, in the hallways, and of course, on her team. She played almost every position. She was just very well loved. This entire community shocked and saddened, and of course, also looking for answers. Send it back to you.
All right, Priya Mann live for us this afternoon. Thank you, Priya.
Heartbreaking. Right now, Sparrow Hospital is the scene of continued life-saving efforts for 5 students who were rushed there after their run-ins with the shooter. It was an all-hands-on-deck situation. This morning, the hospital's chief medical officer was briefly overcome with emotion at his team's response to the crisis.
The team was led by our emergency department physicians, again with our trauma surgeons, but can't forget we had general surgeons, cardiothoracic surgeons, neurosurgeons. Didn't get a lot of sleep last night, sorry. So many people that just came in.
So So emotional. And so far, no one is releasing much information about the 5 students at the hospital. We don't have their names as their families are given time to deal with their ongoing care. We'll go live to Sparrow Hospital in our second half hour. Well, today has to be a really surreal day on the MSU campus. Classes are canceled, and thousands of people are dealing with the trauma of sheltering in place for hours.
All of those students dealing with that. You saw a doctor who wasn't even
together.
able to speak, and he obviously knows how to deal with trauma. And this is affecting all of us. There have been reunions for families who are anxious to be with loved ones after a night of pure terror. Jacqueline Francis joins us this afternoon from the Sparty statue, where some students have been gathering this afternoon. Jacqueline?
We've watched all day as students continue to come and bring flowers, dropping them off at the Sparty statue behind me. They have also been wiping away tears. We've watched them lean on one another, just doing anything they can to try and make sense out of something you just can't make sense of. And while a lot of students are still on campus tonight, many others went home. This morning, we saw a line of cars of parents parked outside of the dorms. Incredibly emotional to watch each and every time. The hugs, the reunifications. Many parents telling us they wanted to get here sooner, but police were saying last night to wait until the scene was more under control. It was obvious these parents got very little to no sleep last night. One Detroit mom walking us through her thought process in those terrifying hours.
I was giving her instructions that other people gave to me, telling her to push her dresser or anything that she could possibly put in front of the door to make it difficult to enter, to get down on the floor, away from the door. She was just too scared at the time and wasn't able to react.
Today you drove up to get your daughter. What was that moment like when you got to see her?
It wasn't real. It just didn't seem real. I was still scared at the time.
We'll hear much more from students and parents coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. For now, reporting live from campus, I'll send it back to you guys.
All right. Thank you, Jacqueline.
And our coverage continues for the next few hours. A state lawmaker gets angry and uses some salty language to make his point as he calls for change. We'll have that story coming up in our 5 o'clock hour. Incredibly, a survivor of the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting is now a student at MSU and just endured another mass shooting. We'll have her story coming up tonight at 6. And clickondetroit.com. We'll be sending you alerts and posting updates around the clock.
Meantime, our live coverage continues in less than 3 minutes. We're going to start digging into the investigation of the suspect's past. Here's Sean Lay.
Karen, we know you've dug up a lot of information about the gunman's previous criminal history and a gun crime charge. We're on the ground here in Lansing, a very quiet dirt road. This little house here, this is where he was living with his father. We want to know as much as we can about what set him off, what his father is saying, what neighbors are saying. Campus just 5 miles that way. Much more next.